Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do like a streaky, leaks, dirty, grunge material slash decal in Substance Designer that we're going to move over into Unreal and kind of test it out as a decal in there. So this is a little bit of an easier tutorial, which will be good so I can go through some different options for you guys, show you how you can make multiple different variations, and switch things up really easily depending on what you want to do. You can see right now on the screen there is the results of what we're going to do today. And so let's just kind of start getting into it. I am a really small channel, so any like, subscribe, any kind of interaction with my channel would be great. We're really pushing here to get to some sort of reasonable amount of views. And if you find any value in this at all, I'd appreciate it if you give me a like or a subscribe. Thanks a lot. So now let's just head over to Substance Designer. Okay, now here we're in Substance Designer, and you can see that the graph isn't all that complicated, so that today should go pretty quick and pretty easy, but it is actually a pretty powerful way of doing multiple variations of your grunge. So let's just start off here. To get to this point, you can go File, New, Substance Graph, and Metallic Roughness. Name it whatever you want. I named mine T Grunge Streaks for texture grunge streaks, and just hit OK. And the only nodes we're going to be using today are going to be a roughness, a normal, and a color. So the other ones that you see that you get in your default, like metal and ambient occlusion and height, we don't need. So just get rid of those. And we're going to start right here with the mask for our grunge. And the mask for a decal is usually the most important thing, so that's what I like to start with. Okay? So we're going to go node by node. I'm going to take you all the way through. There is a possibility I'll miss a setting here or two, but I'll try my best not to. Everything should be open on the right-hand side, so if I do miss a number or something, it'll be over there, but I'll try my best not to. And because this is a little bit simpler, it shouldn't be an issue today. Okay, so we're going to start off with the mask, and I'm going to zoom in here to our shape. And this is just a regular shape. You can see nothing fancy going on here. In fact, I don't believe I changed any of the settings, just square, scale, and everything else is just normal. And remember to look up a node, you hit the space bar, and you can just type in whatever you're looking up, and then you can plop that in. We'll connect our shape to a transform 2D. And the idea here is to move it down on the Y. So first, you want to go to tiling mode up here and select absolute, and then go no tiling, because we don't need it to tile when we pull it down. We just want this white right on the bottom. So we'll bring that down, and you can see here the setting on the Y is -0.82, and that'll move it down. And you can also see here in our viewport how it moved it down. Okay? So now we run that into a blur, and the blur intensity 10. I think that's just the average intensity. You can play with that. This is just basically masking out the bottom of our image. Okay? And you can see here in our 2D point, here's that gradient. Now I'm going to invert that because the white is what's going to be visible and the black is what's not going to be visible. So we invert that, invert grayscale. And then what do we run that up to? Well, we start with this Grunge Map 6 right here. And this is where we get most of the fun. Okay? So here's the Grunge Map 6, and you can see I've hit the random seed, and we're actually going to do that today. I can actually randomize this one, and we'll get a good result. So we'll come back and randomize that. But put in your Grunge Map 6 here, run that into a blend with multiply, and multiply this mask over that. And what that's doing is making sure that on the bottom there's no white. So our streaks are just kind of going in one direction, right? And also with this Grunge Map right here, you can see this brush pattern here. Here's the balance, 0.5. Here's the contrast, 0.72, and the brush pattern is 0.29. And you can see when you use that, it kind of takes it and pulls it in with a gradient. See, on the sides. And that's what we want because we don't want it going all the way across. Now, say you were going to bake this onto a material or something and you wanted it to tile, you could leave the brush pattern all the way this way and it would still tile left to right horizontally. But we're going to put it at 0.29 for now. Okay? And one thing you can also see with that when you do the brush pattern there, let's turn it back off again. You can see we're still, with that mask, it's still masking out the bottom. See how this has a little bit of that there? We're masking that out with that first mask we made. So let's go back to this brush pattern and turn it back to 0.29. And there you go. And now with that blend, this is the type of deal we're going to get. So then we want to transform it. We want to move it quite a bit up, like quite a bit, so that it's just at the top. And again, we want to change our tiling mode here to absolute and then horizontal tiling. So if you wanted it to horizontally tile, it would still tile. But it's not going to tile, it's not going to have the bottom piece here on the bottom, and that's what we want. We just want this part on the top. Okay? So we Y offset that by 0.66, and that's what moves it up to this top part here. Okay, now we'll run this transform 2D here into this transform 2D here, and this one we're going to use to warp it and pull it. And you can see I pulled the handles down of the transform 2D quite a bit down, and you're going to have to play with it, but I made it stop about halfway down. You can kind of see here. I'll give you a look at it. Here, we'll zoom in. I kind of made the streaks run halfway down. You can decide how much or how little you pull it down. And or even if you want, you could make it less streaky down and just have the edge wear. There's all sorts of different options with this. So I run this transform 2D here with the pulled down version. So here's the original. See, there's the original. And then I moved that. You can see I moved the top down a little bit. And I pulled the whole thing. So you can see here's this Y offset of 0.3357. And then I pulled it down. And you can see that's how I got this streaky part here. Okay, this is a pretty important part. That's why I kind of went over it a couple times. Now we'll run this transform into the bottom of a blend and this top transform into a blend. And we'll blend these two together because I want to have the white from this small version blend with this for the large version. And then we'll get this. This will be our mask. Okay? And then we'll run that. This blend is screen, just to blend those two together. And then we'll run that into a mask. And what that is just an output. So you just hit spacebar and look up output. And then there's your node. And I just named that mask, M-A-S-K, in caps. Okay? So delete that. And now that is our mask. So that was pretty easy. And I'll show you how to variate all this stuff when we get further along. So now why don't we do our roughness map? So here's our roughness map here. We'll run this version, just the pulled out version, not the blended together version, up here and into an invert grayscale to flip that around. Then, there's no real settings for that. We'll run that into an ambient occlusion, RTAO, to get this kind of lighting on it. Because what I'm trying to do here is have a little bit of a different roughness on the outsides of the leaks and streaks. So then we'll run that, this ray trace ambient occlusion, run that into a levels here. And you can see the levels handle. I pulled the gray one down this way, the white one down. If you want to put the exact numbers in, here's the levels for those exact numbers. But otherwise, just try to play with it until you get a result relatively similar to mine. You can see here along the outsides, it's kind of shading them darker. So you can see here, I inverted the grayscale because I want to be lighter. I want it to be more rough on the outsides. So it's not quite as shiny along the edges. So you'll notice a lot of people's decals look shiny around the edges and it just kind of looks out of place. This is a way to prevent that. So we take that invert scale, grayscale here, and we'll put that into a blend. We'll blend it with itself on screen. So we're basically just making it lighter. Okay? Now we'll do a grunge leaky paint up here. Just a standard grunge leaky paint. You can see here are the settings. I don't believe I changed any of those. We'll run that into a levels and we'll kind of go crazy on it. And this levels is going to basically determine how you want the streaks to be. Do you want them to be wet or dry? We're making really dry streaks right now, but if you wanted this to be wet, you could pull this handle down and darken this up, and the streaks would look a lot wetter. But for now, we'll do that. Maybe we'll test that later, but for now, we'll do drier. We'll see where we are as far as time. So we'll take this levels into a blend. And I'm not 100% sure if I showed the numbers for this level, so I pulled it up here. So here are the levels numbers if you want to put the exact ones in. Otherwise, of course, you can just play around with it on your own, which I do recommend. And that's the same thing with like this grunge leaky paint. If you want to randomize the seed, right now I don't have it randomized, but we will randomize it a little bit at the end. And we're not going to have the exact same results as I started with, but we're going to try to do something cool. So run that into the levels, and then run the levels into a blend. This blend is screen, so you're blending this white over the top of that levels, and you can see how it's much lighter on the edges as opposed to on the inside. And then we run that into our roughness output. Okay, so that's roughness done. That's a good start. So now we're going to head over to our normal map. And you'd think, oh, there's not going to be much to the normal map. But, you know, I like to add a little bit to it. It kind of looks, you can see here, it kind of looks funny on this cube. But when you apply these kind of bumpinesses, it gives it a little bit of volume in your leak, and it makes it look really good. So let me show you the normal map. So when we make a normal map, we use height map information. So this is the height section. So here's anisotropic noise. So it's like, this is just kind of like vertical lines. You can see down here is the settings, X1, Y95. Here are the other settings. I don't believe I changed those. I do believe I changed these X and Y amounts. Transform 2D, just put 90 degrees for the angle. So we have it going vertically instead of horizontally. Then I run that into a blur at intensity 17.55. We'll run that into a levels, and you can see in the levels I'm just kind of tightening up the levels. So bring the bottom black handle up and the bottom white handle down, and you can see the result is there's less variation in color. And you can see here are the actual level settings if you want to put in the exact numbers over here on the right. And then we run that into a warp. And I'm just warping that by a purlin. I'll show you the purlin here. Scale 64, disorder 0. Randomize that a couple times. Run that into the warp. Make the warp intensity really low on this. You don't want to go crazy with this. So it's 0.01. Okay, run that into a non-directional uniform warp. You can see I have the intensity at 1.5. Warp angle coming straight down basically. And then we'll power that with the black and white spots. So here's the intensity, and here are the other settings. I don't believe I changed any of the trail length stuff, but if I did, there are the numbers. Here's black and white spots here. That's what's going to power that. Black and white spots scale 1, disorder 0, roughness 1. Not randomized at all. We power that by putting that in the intensity and the warp angle. Just very slightly warps it. You're not going to see much when you look, but it will make a difference on the normal map itself. Okay, so now we'll do a moisture noise here. And the moisture noise, the important setting is the Y 0.35. And what that does is it stretches it on the Y, and it makes it look like that moisture noise is kind of pulling down with gravity. Okay, so we'll take that moisture noise and we'll blend that with this non-directional uniform warp. And that would be opacity 0.1 and blending mode overlay. And that would give us our final for our normal map. So we can pull that into a regular normal, and we'll put that intensity 6. You can see kind of the result of our normal map here. It has this kind of wavy type variation, and plus it has these kind of pulley downy, gooky, muddy looking parts. Okay? And then we'll run that normal into our normal output. And then we name it NRM in caps. That's what I like to do. And we'll go back and show you the other ones too. This one's named MASK. And this one for roughness, I named ROUGH all in caps. And the reason I do that is when you export, you can take your name, T grunge streaks, and all these suffixes will be put right at the end of them. And then you don't have to really rename them after you export them. Okay, so now that we have our mask, our roughness, and our height done, or our normal map, let's run this into and do our color real quick. So for our color map, we just do a uniform color here. I'll show you the number for that. Here's the hex number for that first color. Then do another uniform color. And here's the hex number for that, 403A33. We'll blend those both together using a grunge leaks down here. So grunge leaks. And it looks like I randomized that a few times. That might look better or worse depending on how it's kind of matching up with your other masks. So here's the random seed if you want to copy that exactly. I wouldn't because we're going to actually randomize stuff. Run the grunge leaks into the blend. I don't believe I changed any of the grunge leaks settings. Run it into the blend of those two colors. Blend them with copy and opacity 1. And here is the result of that. These are those two colors blended together using grunge leaks. A nice, easy result, but a convincing one. Now we'll do a grunge concrete. What that'll do is just add a little bit of like micro detail to everything. Run that grunge concrete, which I believe is all the same, all the natural settings. Run that into the gradient map. That just allows us to mix black and white map with color. Put that over the top in a blend over our last blend. Do an overlay and 0.1. Okay? Kind of zoom into that, and you can see it gives you very, very faint micro detail that wasn't there before and adds that little bit, just a tiny, tiny bit. So now what we want to do is we want to add a little bit of shading. So we'll go back to our blend here before our normal, and we'll take that up into a pin and then over, and we'll do an ambient occlusion HBAO. You can see the result of that there. Run that into a gradient map. That again allows us to blend the black and white with the color. Put that over the top of our other color output up here, the other blend. Put that in the second spot. And then we'll multiply this one over that one, and it'll just add just a tiny bit of shading to it. And you can kind of see it here. You see the little bit of inset moisture noise shading that's going along. Just kind of making our dirt and grunge more convincing. So we'll run that blend into another blend. This blend we're going to do subtract and opacity 0.1. And we'll run the original color into the second pin. The other pin is going to be all the way back here in our roughness when we did our first invert grayscale. And you can see it has this outline here. Not the blended one, the first one. It's a little bit, it's not quite as bright as the second one. So we'll run this one down into a pin, into another pin, and then I run it into a gradient map again to allow it to be mixed with color. We put it over top of this one in the other blend, and it's at subtract 0.1. And what that does is it subtracts the white here and darkens it. So you can see here, now it'll add this kind of variation to the outsides of our streaks. Now remember, the rest of this is getting masked off. So what we're concerned about is inside of our streaks, right? And we're going to get this nice, like, darker, goopy outline around it doing this. Okay? So send that blend into a levels. And it looks like for this levels, I just pulled the bottom handle up a little bit, the bottom dark handle. And you can see here are the settings for that if you want to put in the exact ones. But I was just lightening it up. You can see from this to this. And this comes out to our base color here. And plug that into our base color. COL I named it. Our base color output. COL. Okay? And that would be our color map. So that's everything for our grunge streaks. But like I said, let me show you the power of this and the variations you can get. So here's the result of our mask here. All right. If we go back to our grunge map here, this one, this was the grunge map 06 here. So if we go back to this one and we randomize it, now watch what happens. Let's just hit randomize a couple times, and you get a completely different streaky grunge. And actually that one I like, so why don't we just use that one? But you can hit this randomize button a million times and you'll get different grungy, streaky results. And you can see the power of this. This is going to give you all sorts of neat, different grunge type materials that you can use to either overlay over materials, or you can use them like we're using it right now as a decal. Okay, so ultimately here's what we ended up with. So here's that seed of what I ended up with here if you want to put that exact one in, or you could just do whatever you want to do. Alright, so let's export this stuff. So right click on your grunge streaks here, export outputs, and you can see here I have it going into this particular folder, BMP, and then I have here's our name, T grunge streaks, and then with the suffix. So here are all the suffixes. I put them all to sRGB, and then we just export outputs. Okay? So then let's go into Unreal. So now here we are in Unreal. I'm in my textures folder here. I'll just re-import these, go re-import, and if you want it, and if you're just doing it on your own, you just right click and import to current folder, okay? So I'll just do this, and I'll re-import those, and now they're in. And let's see what we've got. So there's our result so far. Looking pretty fancy. So let's save that. Now, just a reminder that this concrete here we've also created in other tutorials, and also the brick wall that we've got going on here we've created in other tutorials. I'll link those in the description. Also, if you need help building a world like this, I've also done that in other tutorials, so I'll also link that. But let's get back to our decal here. So there's our decal, and let me show you how I made the decal material. So if you go up to my decals folder here, you'll see I have this material called DCRON. D for decal, color, roughness, opacity, normal, and master. So right click, create a material right here, and name it that. Let's open that puppy up. And now for these texture samples here, like where it says color map, I just drug in a 1 pixel by 1 pixel white texture. You could also drag in, let's say, I went to my textures folder here and I just drug in the color map. You could also use that. But I just like to have the white placeholders when I'm making master materials, because we're going to make a material instance off this. That's best practice. I always make master material, then make a material instance. That way in the future you can make a bunch of different material instances for the same master. So with the texture sample in here, then you can right click, convert to a parameter, name that, and I named mine color map there. So I'm going to delete that out, but I just wanted to show you how to do that. Let's open that up. So this is the color section here. I multiplied that up by a vector 4, which is just holding 4 and left click. And then you can open that up and just put 1s in for RGB and alpha. And then to look things up, you right click and you can just put in multiply here, or the M key, and left click is multiply. And you can just take the RGB here into the A, this into the B, and multiply those, saturate, put in a saturate node, and run that into base color, okay? And one important thing to note over here on the left-hand side, you want to change the material domain to deferred decal, because this is a decal, and blend mode to translucent, because we want to make it translucent, okay? So now for roughness, we'll do the same. Pull your roughness map in, or I pulled in a 1 pixel by 1 pixel. Convert that to a parameter named roughness map. Run that into a remap value range node. And then we're going to put in a few values here. So hold 1 and left click, bunk, bunk, for the 2 values. And you can put 0 for 1 and 1 for 1. and then put 0 into the input low and 1 in for the input high. Then put in 2 more values the same way by holding 1 and left clicking, and then right click and rename this one roughness low for a parameter, and rename this one roughness high for a parameter. And have those set at 0 and 1, so there's no change just from the beginning. But if we want to change it later, we can change it. So take that result and plug that into roughness. What that'll allow us to do is change our roughness and remap the value range, so we could either make it shinier or duller or whatever we want to do. So now we'll do our opacity mask. So pull our mask in, or I just did a 1 pixel by 1 pixel white, and rename that to a parameter opacity mask. Okay, multiply that by a value called opacity, 1, left click, convert to a parameter, name that opacity, put 1 in there, multiply. Always make sure to put your default values in, otherwise you're going to get some weird results. Multiply that, plug that into our opacity mask. Now we get that mask with our deferred decal and our translucent over here. And then now we're just going to give ourselves the ability to change the intensity of the normal. So bring in your normal map, or I just pull in a 1 pixel by 1 pixel normal I made, run that into a breakout float components 3. Okay, just look that one up. And then we're going to do 2 multiplies, so M and left click twice, R into the A, G into the A of 1, make a parameter called normal strength, so 1, left click, convert to a parameter called normal strength, make sure to put 1 in there, put that in the B, that in the B of those 2 multiplies, run those into an append, so then we'll be reappending the red channel and then the green channel, and then append the blue channel to them. So we're putting it all back together. We're taking it apart, adding some strength to it if we want, and then we're putting it back together, the vector, and then we'll run that up into the normal. Okay, so what that'll do was allow us to give it a tint in the color if we want. I'll change the roughness. We can add more or less, well, mostly less opacity, and intensify the normal map if we want, or decrease the intensity even. And decals and materials in general get a lot more complicated than this. This tutorial is more focused on the creation of the maps in Substance Designer than the actual complexity of the decal. And maybe in the future I'll do a more in-depth look at decal materials in general, so it can allow us to have some that'll kind of wrap around corners and do some special things. But this is just relying on kind of more the inbuilt decal situation that's in Unreal right now. So there's our master material. Shut that down. And you can see it here, there's the master material. Now we're going to right click on that, create material instance, and we're going to name it DI for decal instance grunge streaks. And there it is. Let's open it up. And now if you had the textures, you just brought the regular textures in, you're going to have them in there already. But since mine weren't, I had to tick the tick boxes, and then I'll pull them in to each of their respective categories. So you go to textures here. So if you had a different one, you'd pull the different ones in. So you pull the color to color, normal to normal, mask to mask, and roughness to roughness there. Okay. And you can see already in my material instance, I've already ticked these boxes. This one's not necessary. I didn't do anything with that. Those are the default values for the roughness. But normal strength I changed to 1.5 just to let it kind of pop out a little bit more against the concrete. And I changed the opacity to 0.8. So if we want, we can set those back to normal. And you can see now you can really see it kind of pop out a little bit more, you'll see. But if you want some of the concrete to show through, go back to that decal. So like if you want more of this to show through, then you can adjust the opacity setting here. So if we go to this, we can just pull this down, and you can see it'll get lighter and lighter and lighter until you can barely see it. And sometimes that's good because you want to, like, say you want to kind of come down with it and just add some variation because maybe you want to break up your concrete material or something, right? So what I decided to stay at was like a 0.75 or 0.8, something around in there. And I've also applied it over to my bricks, and that's what's nice about having the additional settings. So say you wanted to make it lighter for the bricks, say you made a different material instance when it's laying over the bricks than you make for when it's laying over the concrete over here, right? So let's just put it at 0.75. That seems like a good one. Normal strength, let's put that back up to 1.5 because I liked it pumping out a little bit more. And let's just kind of take a look at that. Okay, that's me from the future, just kind of realizing that I didn't show you how to pull the decal onto your stuff. So like, all you got to do is grab your decal here, throw it on. There you go. See, now it's on the ground. We'll delete that out. And let's just delete this one off. Pull it in. So now we'll have to rotate it. 90. Pull it this way. Rotate it this way. Alright, there we go. And pull it right onto our wall. And there you go. That's just how you add that to our world. But didn't have that in the original video, so there you go. And yeah, I think that does a pretty good job of being like dirty, streaky stuff. Okay? So the other thing, like I was saying before, is you could adjust the roughness is here because we gave ourselves that ability. Say you want to make it shinier. Now you can see you drop that down and you start getting a shinier roughness map. So you can make it more look like a leak or something like that. And you can also go back and adjust the roughness map in the material itself, like I said before. And I'll kind of show you that. So like if you go back into here, and then you go, this was where I was talking. If you adjust the levels here and you drop this down, you'll have a shinier roughness map. Okay? Okay, so there you go. And like I said, you might want to make different material instances depending on what kind of surface you have it on. And this kind of gives you all of those different options there. So I think that's a pretty good result. And I think from here you can play with it. And like when we were randomizing the maps, you can make all sorts of different grunges. And you can kind of trim your different concrete and all your different stuff in different ways. So I think that's where we're going to leave it. I think we've gone through everything. So thank you very much. I am a really small channel. I'm trying to get it to where I'm getting a reasonable amount of views or something that kind of motivates me to kind of keep on going forward. So if you like this, give it a like or maybe a comment. Give me a positive comment or anything, really. Interact with the videos, and that'd be great. It would help me out. I do appreciate you guys being here. This was a little bit quicker tutorial today, so that's good, and hopefully it helps you out and gives you some good ideas of how to do some neat grunges starting in Substance Designer. And remember, you can also build this directly into your materials. And if you've been following material tutorials with me, you should be able to understand how to kind of add these together. Maybe we'll make one of those in the future. Who knows? Thank you for being here. I hope you have a great rest of the day, and take care of yourselves.